Good morning. Good morning. Good morning. Good morning. Good morning. It is 9:15 Central Time, and that means it is time for the CSLDallas not Saturday, Sunday Science of Mind class. It's going to be one of those mornings. My name is Tracy Brown, and I am a leader and volunteer here at CSLDallas. And one of my favorite things to do, and one of my greatest honors, is that whenever Dr. Petra is not available for the Sunday morning class, I most of the time get to fill in for her, which for me is great because then I get to spend a few minutes with you diving a little bit deeper into the Science of Mind textbook, the words and the meaning of the words from our founder, Ernest Holmes, and I get to hear your questions about it. The number one thing for this, the reason that we do this, is not just to read Ernest Holmes, but to make sure that you are taking it in a way that during the week you are able to apply it to real situations in your life. Last week, Dr. Petra started diving in on treatment, and so especially at home, if you are following along with your textbook, we are going to begin on page 47, about 2/3 of the way down the page. And this section is titled Treatment Active, Not Passive. And Dr. Petra did a beautiful job last week, really honing in on the fact that treatment is an active thing. It is active mentally, and it is active in your behavior, following through on what you are intending, and we're going to just keep diving into that today. So, beginning in the second paragraph in that section, at the bottom of page 47, take in these words, but also think about, oh yeah, I get that. Or, what in the world was Ernest Holmes talking about then? Because I'm going to be asking you for your examples and your questions. Quoting, "The mind must conceive before the creative energy can produce. We must supply the avenue through which it can work. It, or spirit, is ready and willing. It is its nature to spring into being through our thought and action. In an iron foundry, the pig iron is thrown into a great furnace and melted. That which was solid then becomes liquid and is then poured into molds which are fashioned in different shapes. The iron itself neither knows nor cares what particular form it takes. It's formless, ready to take any form supplied. If we did not place it in the proper molds, the liquid would assume no particular form. This is the way it is in dealing with the subtle energy of spirit, but the molds are made in our subjective mind. Through conscious and specific thought, through purpose and direction. We should be very careful not to think that because we make the mold, we must create the substance. The substance already exists. It is part of the life in which we live, a part of the universal energy. Definite molds or concepts decide the shape which is to be created from the general liquid. This should prove to us that there is a specific technique in mental treatment which we should not overlook. If we wish a certain or specific good, We must instill into our own minds a realization of this good, and then, as this idea is the mold we place in mind, it will be filled by the substance necessary for the complete manifestation of this good in our lives. Whew. So I love this description that Ernest Holmes gives us there in those few paragraphs. Partially because I remember the first time I read that little section, and I was like, pig iron, foundry, molds. Like, what is he talking about? I don't know anything about foundries and molds, but I read it 4 or 5 times. And it's like, oh, he's just making the point that this form that we know in one way gets melted, and then when it gets melted, it can be used by placing it in any mold, and it will take on that form. And I was like, oh, okay, I still don't know much about foundries. Never heard of pig iron before reading this, but it's like, oh, okay. So in my life, whatever the form is for anything, when I create the mold, when I get really clear about what it is I want to experience or the quality of life I want to have, that idea becomes the mold. And spirit shifts whatever the substance is that is required to deliver that experience or that item or that person or that medical treatment or that end result, whatever I'm certain about. It's like, oh, the people, the resources, the time, the energy, the whatever the physical need is, spirit is going to put it into the mold I create through my idea, through my intention, through my mold, my decision. And then it's going to show up as that. Does that make any sense? So that's what we're talking about in this section. Treatment is, it's not just this, kind of woo-woo idea of something. Treatment actually requires us to be actively engaged. Okay, please hear me. Treatment requires us to be actively engaged. So not just the word, the title is treatment is active, not passive. Doesn't mean just be busy. It doesn't mean you are making whatever happens come true simply by your behavior. Like, I have to just figure it out and make it work. And I'm going to make a list of 20 actions and I'm going to do those things and I'm going to make it happen. No, treatment, you must be actively engaged. So that means, what are you thinking in alignment with what you say you want? And yes, what are you doing that supports or confirms or reinforces that that is the direction in which you want your life to go? But it doesn't mean you are actually creating the liquid substance into form. So treatment, active, not passive. I'm going to say a couple more things and then we're going to go to questions and comments and observations. So treatment, active, not passive, and then that beautiful description from the bottom of page 47 to the top of page 48 about what happens to iron in a foundry and then turning it into whatever the mold is. Then Ernest Holmes goes on to write on page 48, the last paragraph in this section, therefore, if a person is seeking to demonstrate, they must tell themselves that they have faith in the power, in the ability, and in the principle, and in the certainty of demonstration and in the certainty of the demonstration for that which has been named. Faith, being a mental attitude, is according to law. Faith, being a mental attitude, is according to law. And even though someone doubts, they can overcome their doubts and create the desired faith, definitely. If this were not so, only those who by nature have faith in God could ever hope to understand the principle of the science of mind and spirit, which is subject to certain, definite, immutable, and impersonal laws. However, even though faith is a necessary attitude, it is something that can always be established by explaining the theory and proving the principle. So, treatment, active, not passive, and a big part of that activity that each one of us is responsible for is the activity of applying faith. That we actually are moving, can move, will be supported by the infinite nature and the infinite intelligence of the universe, moving toward that which we claim, the mold we have created. Now, if all of that doesn't give us something to talk about, then I think you all are still asleep. So, Ryan, why don't you give us some instructions for sharing?
Sure, and good morning to you, Dr. Tracy Brown, and good morning to everybody here in the room. And for all the folks all over the globe, welcome and thank you for joining us. And yes, this is an interactive discussion, and so we have a few housekeeping rules that we follow as we're doing that. So for the folks here in the room, I know it's an early morning, and I know we just had a loss of an hour last week. So show me by a raise of hand that you know how to raise your hand this morning. All right, awesome. And that's how you're going to ask for this wonderful microphone. I have the iconic Richard over here to my right who will be helping me out. But I encourage every single one of you to volunteer here at CSLDallas by passing the microphone off to your fellow friend. And for the folks here online, let's see if you're awake. Will the folks in Zoom hit the raise your hand icon? All right, I see a few of them awake this morning. All right, awesome. And that's how you'll engage with us. You just hit the raise your hand icon, or you can also put your questions and comments in the chat. And for those who are on Facebook, I know a few of you are over on the other side of the globe, so it's the evening time for you, so you definitely should be awake. But why don't you go ahead and check in with us and say hello and where you're watching us from today. Make sure that you're online and awake with us. And as always, for those who are pitting their questions and comments inside of the chat, I do keep those anonymous. That way we can continue to have a safe container for spiritual growth. So I'm just going to poll the audience here in the room real quick. Did anybody have a question or a comment, or I have somebody online? Great. Yes. So we're going to go here in the room, and then I'm going to come back to Armando here in a second. Online.
Great. And please don't forget to say your name so others will know who you are.
Good morning, everybody. This is Sheila. It occurred to me as you were speaking, if we each create the form, and let's say two people that are close have opposing forms, how does that work? I don't want to be real specific, but if two people are focused on a different outcome, and they're both going through the same like mind of spirit,
yes,
how does that work?
Yes, beautiful question. Very practical question. And haven't we all experienced that? We're clear about our objective, our goal, and then our sister, our brother, our spouse, our coworker, our boss, our person who reports to us, someone we're engaging with that you need to be going in the same direction. It's like, then you find out, oh no, we actually want some very different things. So a couple of comments. One, we don't create the form, but we imagine the form, or we set the intention, and we may have an idea of what that will look like, or we definitely should have an idea of how we are going to feel when that is delivered, when it is manifest. And so the universe is paying attention to everyone and everything, right, all the time. So if there are two divergent desires or intentions, there are two different people. And so they will affect each other. So like when we're in class a lot, we talk about, especially like in a family, where, you know, a parent wants a certain thing and an adult child, we're not going to talk about young children that you're raising and the responsibility and all of that, but an adult child in their family is really moving in a different direction, and how much tension that can cause. So as much as possible, the universe is going to deliver to each person their desire. But that means that both people are equally fervent, equally clear, equally devoted and committed, and doing the supportive behaviors. And often that's not what happens. Often that's not what happens. Often, and this is not just like in relationships, at work this happens, right? I want to work in an environment where everyone gets along and people support each other, and right, I can have a clear vision for that. And there may be my coworker, and they're just the two of us in this office setting, and we report to the same person. The other person could be like, you know, I really don't care about this job. I really don't care, or I don't want us to work on that project. If you're thinking about the good outcome, quote unquote good outcome all the time, and you are also feeding that, and the other person is just kind of lackadaisical, and they, you know, they're there, they want the paycheck. They don't like that idea, but they're also not advocating for something else. Then remember, the shortcut to a miracle manifestation, what are you thinking about the most frequently, and what are you attaching the most energy to? And so if there are two people and one person is attached to a certain thing and they are thinking about it constantly, adding a lot of emotion to it, that's probably going to edge out the other. So it really only becomes a problem when it is even in clarity and even in conviction and eager in emotion, and equal in emotion. It just seems to us like we're doing this. So what do? Any practitioner or minister will tell you, what do? You stay focused on what you want, and you stop focusing on what you don't want. You stay focused on what your behavior needs to be, and you stop judging or focusing on the other person or group's behavior. One more example, because I love this question so much, before we go to the virtual audience. The easiest way for you to remember this, when you are in a personal situation where there are conflicting goals, the easiest way for you to remember how, rewind. The easiest way for me to remember when that happens in my life is I think about it instead of on a personal level, I think about it on a global level. And I remind myself as a Black woman that I do wish there was a world where there was no racism, where I was not judged negatively based on the color of my skin. And I'm going to do all the things that I can do in my personal life and even into the collective to shift that and try to get everybody on the same page as me. Let's go. Let's have a world where there is unity and harmony that was designed by spirit, and the diversity was defined by spirit too. Yay, let's go. And I have a lot of energy around that. However, what I know is that there are a lot of people who would like for that to happen, but they are not actively engaged in praying for that or making it happen. And there are a lot of people who are actively engaged in creating a hierarchy based on race and in separating people based on race. And apparently they're spending a lot more energy, time, and emotion on making sure they have a leg up or they are in a superior role than others. And so it doesn't even out because we aren't on the same page. And wherever the most emotion, the most focus, the most consistent dominant thought pattern is, individually or collectively, that's what's going to happen. So, Brian, what you got?
You know, not only do I love learning the science of mind from you, Dr. Tracy Brown, but I love the words that you use. Lackadaisical? That is a new one for me. I love that one. All right, so we're going to go ahead and go to Armando. You want to join the conversation? And unmute yourself. Hello, hello.
Good morning, Dr. Tracy Brown.
Hey, Armando.
So in December of 2021, I had this idea and this vision of creating a digital inclusion event in South Dallas to bring the community together so that they can experience all of the possibilities when you have access to the internet, to be able to have access to technology. And so I had a very clear vision, and I wrote my gratitude in advance as it already manifested. And then I pitched it to a colleague, and she loved it, and so we're collaborating on this. And then the conversations popped up every once in a while. It didn't go anywhere. Then it popped up again, and we were scheduled to have it in October, and it just didn't work out. And I let it go, but I keep showing up every day, creating opportunities and possibilities. And so now, this coming Saturday, March 25th, we are having our first ever inaugural event, Get Connected Dallas. We have drones, robotics, STEM Village for all the kids to be able to experience how to use a drone, cybersecurity activities. I mean, everything fell into place. We have sponsors to fund it, exhibitors. We have over 30 exhibitors. It's so much bigger than what I ever imagined. And I let it go, and I just keep showing up every day. And now, this coming Saturday, it's here, and it's insane.
Are you calling the infinite intelligence of the universe insane? OMG, Armando, but I agree with you. It is insane. It is out of anything in our own minds that we can imagine. If insane is something that with the human brain, it's like you are not in alignment with the status quo, that is then insane. Whoop, whoop. Whoa, that is such a great demonstration. You created the mold, right? You created a mold, an event for underserved population, have it in South Dallas, and the pig iron got melted and poured into this mold in the form of vendors, in the form of exhibitors, in the form of the programming, the education, and I expect to see on the local news next Saturday video media coverage beyond anything that the Cardboard Project has ever had before. Now I'm claiming that, I am demanding it from the universe, and I know it is done. Now, do I have any so it is amens in the house? Hey, wow, that's how it works. We treat, we move our feet, and we never give up on the intention or the idea. So it didn't happen in the targeted date of October of 2022. And Armando could have said, oh, I guess God doesn't want this to happen. Or Armando or me or you or any of us could say, oh, well, it didn't happen now, but delay is not denial. I am clear this is an intention that must manifest. There must need to be some different configuration. The universe must be moving the right people into the right positions to say yes or to write the check. The universe must be preparing me for the event to be double what I originally envisioned. The universe must be preparing the volunteers that are going to be needed to help escort these children through the process. But I don't know what the universe is doing. All I know is the universe must respond to this treatment and deliver this or something better. Thank you, Armand, for the something better part of me being able to say that, because sometimes our visions, our imaginations are just a little bit too small, even though they feel really unattainable and big to us. Ryan, what you got?
Well, I see that we got Brenda here. Also, just polling the room, anybody
Right, and then we'll come back to the room.
TSRW or something they'd like to share. Okay, Brenda, do you want to go ahead and unmute yourself and join us?
Good morning, Dr. Tracy and community. Wow, Armando, you have always been an inspiration for me. Now, taking that dream, that vision, I'm going to dive into a word you've used, Dr. Tracy, and that is as you want, as you desire. And when I first heard you talk about the mold a few years ago, my first thought is, okay, spirit is yellow. And as I've taken a few more classes, realizing that I am the mold shaper, I am the container of the mold, and I am the outcome of the product. When you say, first off, I need to substitute trust for faith. And in moving from what I want to its manifestation, one thing I really learned through Science of Mind and Spiritual Mind treatment classes is it's not what I want, it's what I believe. It's my inner conviction, because I wanted from a little girl to feel loved, connected, and belonging, and worthy, and all of those things, and all of the psychological and emotional preparation I did. I could want all I wanted. Changing those thoughts, that's where the real molten lava comes from, that real prior shape melting down is the dispelling of the limiting beliefs and the false ideas and the blinders and the chains, and thinking of the possibility that I could know and be loved, that I could know connection, that I can embody wholeness. And it took tremendous, after that realization, treat and move your feet, to bring psychology, emotion, behavior, habit, intent, and move from want to conviction.
Beautiful. I saw some heads nodding in the room. I'm sure there are some heads nodding online. Woo, and thank you for that. I sometimes forget because I've been applying the principles for decades. So when I say, what is it that you want versus what you don't want, yes, you're correct. When I say want and desire, I am already automatically thinking or listening for how do you believe that is possible. And so belief and trust are two words that definitely apply here, and they may resonate better for some of you. So not so much what do I believe in the specific. So, and I'll just use Armando's example since it's a shared example among us now, that Armando had full belief that this type of event could happen and it would benefit many people. And he wanted it, he desired it, but he also had a belief. And as he got in touch with, and as he was grounded in his belief, and he said he wrote the gratitude statement, like way early in the process. I'm grateful that, and I don't know what it was, so just forgive me, Armando, I'm gonna make some stuff up. So, I'm gonna touch X number of people in this part of the town and provide this kind of education. And thank you, I'm so grateful that X number of people attended, and right, claiming it. So if he could believe that, the universe could fulfill that and be like, oh, 500 people? Well, no, if we're going to get this space, you're really going to need 1,000 people, right? And yeah, you're already at 500, piece of cake. But he didn't say, oh, one day in an ideal world, this would happen, and not actually, as Brenda described, not actually believe it could be possible. And for many of us, what we say we want, we don't believe it can ever happen. Dr. Petra frequently shares this example. So many of you have heard it before, where she shares her example of wanting to be in a happy, healthy, personal, primary relationship. And she was in some relationships, but at a certain point, she realized she didn't actually believe. She was like, I don't know what a happy, healthy relationship looks like, feels like, and why would that really happen for me, right? And that's where she did her work, her own work, to strengthen her belief and to not have it just be words. And from that, her relationships changed. And she would say improved, so I can say improved, not from Tracy's judgment, but from Dr. Petra's reporting, self-reporting. So thank you, Brenda. Belief, critical, and trust. And trust, it's not that trust and faith are completely interchangeable, but when we are talking about our own behavior and our own belief system, they are very, very synonymous. Do I have faith? Am I behaving in a way that demonstrates trust in spiritual law and trust in myself? Okay, comment in the room, question in the room, example in the room. All the way over here, do we have a microphone?
Yeah, and as we're coming over to you, I did have a couple folks ask me what Armando's project was called, and it's called getconnecteddallas.org. So if you'd like to learn more, it's getconnecteddallas.org. And for the folks online, I put that link in there for you.
Thank you, Ryan.
Okay, I'm Steve. I took a class a long time ago, and a number of people in the class were saying, well, I can't believe this because, I have this fabulous relationship or I have this great business, and they say, it's just not believable. And I, kind of in the back of my head, I want to get your thoughts on this. Say, well, everything is moving in the right direction. It's not that I have it now. Maybe if you don't have that belief now, well, things are moving in that direction. I know that I'm creating and I'm moving toward a good relationship, or I'm moving toward a good business, etc. What are your thoughts on that, Tracy?
I am thinking that whatever class that was, I hope I was teaching it, and I hope you got that from me.
I'm sure it was.
So immediately as you gave that example, because it is such a common example, what the words in my head, right? If I'm working with someone, I'm in a class or I'm coaching someone and they're like, but I can't believe it. All right, can you begin to believe it is possible? So I'm moving toward, but I'll use beginning in this moment, right? Or I am beginning right now to develop my belief in this outcome. I'm beginning, ing words are action words in our mind as well. So if you can't get all the way to the end goal or objective, and there is like you can physically feel the resistance, then don't try to keep beating the ultimate into your mind, because you can do 1,000 affirmations a day and your brain will say, no, that's not true, right? I am prosperous. And your brain is like, no, you're not. I saw those bills that came in. And I saw your bank balance when you checked the bank balance this morning. So your brain is telling you, and you can feel that, oh, okay, I can't believe I am prosperous. I'm just play acting. I'm using magical thinking. So yes, the affirmation and the language in step 3 of treatment is shifting at that point. You shift it to, I'm beginning to do the things that give me a prosperous life. In this very moment, I am starting the process of becoming prosperous. I am learning from others who are already prosperous how to increase my prosperity. I am learning, I am beginning, I am starting, I am not hoping. That's the one word you can't use. You cannot use hoping. Okay, that doesn't work. Next week or the week after, we'll get to page 49, which I already said is my favorite page, and it's because there is a quote. Hope is a subtle illusion. Right? So you can't use hoping. It has to be some activity that you are ing to move toward. And many of you have heard us here at CSLDallas say that everything is good or it's moving toward good. So moving toward is a good thing in your affirmation or in your treatment as well. I'm moving toward great prosperity in my life. My prosperity is improving every week. So that's different. Your brain will hear that differently than the phrase, I am prosperous, right? I am moving toward prosperity. I'm increasing my prosperity every month. Does that make sense? Yeah? Okay. Ryan, do you have anything online before we begin to close down? Or anybody else in the room?
Yeah, they did want some more expansion, I'll call it that, on this notion of conflicting beliefs. So I believe one thing, you believe another. It plays its role out there in the world, right? So just expound a little bit more on that.
I can do that. So we are in this human experience, and we know that no two individuals are exactly the same. And so one thing that we get tripped up on is we assume that others should think the way that we do or want the same things. And most of the time, it is not an issue for people to want something different or to have different priorities. And we don't think so much about it. So this whole concept of contradicting, I don't think of them totally as contradicting. I think about every one of us as individuals and society as a whole. We're always moving, the universe is always moving to deliver that which we have prioritized. We just are prioritizing different things. If it's someone who I am directly engaged with in my personal life or my professional life, then yeah, the communication skills, the process, the human things that I might do to create alignment are skills. I'm going to use skills. But that's what I do with everything else too, right? If I want to become a nurse, I am holding those intentions and I'm doing my affirmations and I'm doing my spiritual work, and at the same time, I'm doing the human activity of taking classes, of meeting other nurses and finding out what it's really like, of doing what I can do on the human side. So if we have contradicting desires or intentions, I am going to do my spiritual work. And I also have to apply my human skills or learn my human skills in order for them to work together. Because again, even though I don't create the final form, I've created the mold. And then I have to do the things that make that mold ready for spirit to fill it with whatever it needs to be filled with. You don't say you want a beautiful garden in your yard without, or you can say that, and there's nature that's happening, but you have to plant the seeds, you have to weed the garden, you have to water whatever you've planted, but it is the universe that's actually in charge of that seed becoming the tree or the plant or that rose bush. You don't actually control that. You made the container for it, and you took care of the container so it would be ready. So with contradicting beliefs, it's the same way. I make the container for it. If I know that there are contradicting beliefs, then I'm doing the human side of clarifying those, trying to come to some common belief, and creating the container where that can happen, which sometimes means I am the one that has to change or modify what my original belief or desire was. So we are always working with the divine, that is our essence, and the human, which is our exterior experience. And that is where the science of mind principles become handy and become tools and resources for us, because we are both human and divine. And the science of mind principles allow us to know how to get in alignment with spiritual principle so we can have the life we want to have. That is Science of Mind class for this Sunday. And Ryan's going to give us some closing announcements, but if you are in the room and this is your first time or first or second time, please check in with Julia before you totally leave the space, and she will welcome you and answer any questions you have about CSL Dallas. Ryan?
Yeah, you know, we have a lot of great things going on here at CSL Dallas, and just a quick reminder, we do have Melissa and Z with us today in our celebration, so you definitely want to stay around for that. And then they are going to be hosting a workshop afterwards, and the Joy Village, if you're here on campus, is also going to be doing a luncheon, which is going to be great for helping to fund our youth here on campus. Yes. And it is a hybrid workshop, so those online, you guys can join, and I'll put a link in the description. The other thing that Tracy and I did not remember, but is very important, is that Tracy's got a class coming up on the 23rd. Talking about the same thing, the universal principles.
Spiritual principle and practice, or universal spiritual practices and principles. We're going to go over the 10 principles and 10 practices that are the foundation for Science of Mind. It starts Thursday, March 23rd, 5 Thursdays, 7 to 9:30 p.m., both in person and online. So come hang out with me. We'll have a good time.
Absolutely. That's all I wanted to recognize and say.
Thank you, Ryan. Thank you, everybody. Thank everybody online. Bye for now.